finalists. The judges, timekeepers, and competitors have been briefed as to the rules of the competition. Competitors, please come and take your places up front. Now that all competitors have been seated, writing is allowed. As mentioned, the competitors have been briefed on the competition and realize that their general discussion should be directed toward each other rather than the audience. In my role as moderator, I will not attempt to control or direct this discussion. Remember, the discussion is meant to resemble a committee meeting with the end goal of determining possible solutions to the question at hand. This is not a panel discussion with point, counterpoint, and active moderator. As such, I will not intervene unless or until disparaging or inappropriate remarks have been made. With that in mind, the burden is on the competitors to moderate themselves and conduct themselves in a cooperative and congenial manner. The question for this round is, agriculture uses water for everything from growing crops, raising livestock, and moving products to and from farms and ranches. Water issues are often hotly debated, are unique to each region, and can pose significant challenges to growers. How can Farm Bureau help address water management challenges and seek long-term solutions for farmers and ranchers? The competitors for this round are Andy Paul, Heather Cave, Newt Gilman, Allison Randall, and Jacob Bearden. We will begin this discussion with 30-second opening statements from each competitor. Following the opening statements will be 25 minutes of open discussion, followed by 1 minute of quiet time for the competitors to prepare their 1-minute closing statements. Official time is kept by the timekeeper. Competitors, in voluntary order, you may make your 30-second opening statements. Please stand and direct your opening statements to the audience. The timer will indicate when your 30 seconds have elapsed by holding up a red card. You may begin.
Water wars, waters of the United States, water that we can't access, water used for trade, H2O, my gosh. Farmers and ranchers are producing more to feed a growing population, but are doing so with the challenge of doing that with less water. I believe that Farm Bureau can help our farmers answer the call through legislation, showing up in conversations about water management and drought preparation. So what are we waiting for? I'm excited for our conversation this morning.
The first scientific fact that all students learn is that every living thing needs water. In the agriculture sector, from crops to livestock and electricity to trade, we all have to have that high quality H2O. Today, with that demand for such clean and usable water, there are challenges. I hope that with this discussion through Farm Bureau, we can address these solutions.
Water is one of those things that most of us take for granted. You can push a button and pretty much get all you want. But to a farmer, water is everything. Without water, we don't have farms, and without farms, we don't have food. I think Farm Bureau can play an active role in mitigating water issues and water management, and I look forward to discussing those ideas with the rest of the panel.
I certainly believe that this issue is one that Farm Bureau can have an active involvement with, as far as coming up with a solution that protects our farmers as well as farmers and ranchers, as well as others who aren't directly involved in agriculture from the production side, but also would have a voice in that area. And I look forward to exploring this topic further.
We see water all over the world, from across the country to right here in our hometowns. Water for farms and other places for irrigation and transportation for our product to be able to be shipped across the country or even stay inside the United States is a great thing. And I believe Farm Bureau can have a great way of letting farmers move their products and continue to grow it. I look forward to discussing with you today.
You have heard the opening statements. The competitors may now proceed with discussion. Competitors, please direct your discussion to your fellow panel members.
I think it's important to This question talks about how do we address the water management issue and how can Farm Bureau be a part of that? But I always believe before as farmers and ranchers, we want to solve problems immediately, but sometimes I don't know if we can solve the problem until we discuss what's the root cause of that. And so as I was thinking through, what is the root cause of it? Between water usage, water wars, water legislation, things that are constantly out and about. I also want to start our conversation saying that in our state, we're pretty lucky with some of the water usage that we have. I have a friend named Jake Judge in Nebraska, and Jake is a farmer out in Nebraska. And with their water, they have to not only drill the well for their farm, but then they're also charged for the gallons that they use, or they're given an allotment every single year on the amount of water that they use. And so as we get into the issues and solutions and all that with water, I'd love to start just by saying that we're pretty lucky in Georgia that even with the issues that we're facing, it's not as bad as it could be. And there are potential answers out there. So Heather, what are your thoughts on issues that we're facing?
So I definitely think that one of the main issues that we face nationally with water issues is just the simple fact that we have allowed ourselves to be a little more reactive and proactive in the way of we haven't acted on behalf of our farms and our ranches on the forefront of things, and now there are those FDA and EPA regulations, and we're behind the 8 ball at this point, so we're having to backtrack and gain that ground that we've already lost. And so I think that really takes us right into a way that we can address that problem with an actual solution that Farm Bureau can dive right in with. So I don't know if you all are familiar with the commodity advisory groups that are within Farm Bureau. There is actually a water commodity advisory group. And so really, I think we could directly address this solution or this problem with a solution through the Water Commodity Advisory Committee at our conference in December, our convention. Having the water commodity the water group come in and host a survey at our convention and ask each commodity or just each member that's attending to advise us, okay, what is your commodity that you produce? And what water issues actually face you? So survey our congregation, if you will, and just see how we can directly target what specific issues we face with our membership in our state. Do you think that you have a way that we can maybe branch off of that and make that more of a widespread effort for our state?
I do, and I think so far the way y'all have been talking about the issue is actually indicative of the way we need to go about it. Farm Bureau being a national organization that feeds off grassroots, local base is the solution. That's actually our strength. Western water law, Eastern water law, Georgia versus Florida versus Alabama, like it all gets pretty convoluted if you try to address it from a national standpoint. So as far as legislation, all that goes, any policy that we pursue needs to empower the states to manage their resources locally, because our producers are closer to their state and local governments than they are Washington and any bureaucrats in the EPA. One of our strengths and one way that I think we can do something similar to what you're talking about, Heather, as far as bringing someone to our convention, not just survey the producers, but we can use our conventions, our district meetings, all the regular functions we already do to educate our producers about irrigation techniques, water management techniques that can allow them to not only do a better job watering their crops without losing water to evaporation, but then we'll also have data that we can turn around and show the Supreme Court or a government agency that, hey, our producers, if there is a problem with water, our producers are not the problem, because we have all these producers using these management techniques that have been proven to prolong the water supply. In fact, back in 2021, when the Supreme Court ruled in Georgia's favor with the Georgia-Florida water laws, President McCall actually referenced that one of the things that helped us win that case is we were able to demonstrate that our producers in Southwest Georgia were using their water resources wisely. And that really might have been overfishing with the oyster industry in Florida that might have been the cause of the problem. So I think really just educating our producers and making sure these proven techniques are more widely used will give us the strength when we go to the legislators, and we'll have numbers that we can point to say, it's not the American farmer, it's something else, but it's not us. Trust us with the resources that we've already done a good job taking care of. And Jacob, I'd like to hear maybe some of your thoughts on that.
So I like where you're going with that, teach them more about the irrigation systems that could maybe limit the amount of water usage, such as a drip technology. And being able to bring that more accessible to our production farmers, but at a cheaper cost. Because right now drip and lay flat that you have to run with it can be overly extremely expensive. If we were able to produce, Farm Bureau was able to come together and maybe teach them better ways to use that and manage a way that our money could be used to get those. As well as I saw a report where UGA was helping with some farmers in counties that was able to go out and they were putting in systems to check certain areas in their farms and their fields to see what needed the most water, what needed the least amount of water, so that they could maximize the amount of water they use. If we were able to, as Farm Bureau, bring a group together and help bring that accessible to more farmers, whereas right now it's kind of limited because they're only kind of testing it out right now. But if we could expand that, then that also brings it where we are limiting the amount of water usage, but we're getting optimal use. But you could also bring that back to your legislature and show, like you said, oh, we are maximizing it. I mean, farmers are one of the biggest people that want to protect the land. So
We're the best conservationists, really.
we are.
Sure, and I think, Jacob, that brings up a huge point when you mentioned UGA. Because I think one of the things that we really need to address here is that as Farm Bureau and as agriculturalists, we are not in this battle alone. And so I think that partnership is a huge part of a goal that we could actually be successful here. And so, Allison, I just maybe want to think about, like, do you have any ways that maybe we could partner with UGA, with NRCS, with USDA on a local level to maybe springboard into a solution?
Yeah, so I actually was wanting to bring that up when you mentioned the commodity advisory committees. So when I was a graduate student, my work was with the water boards in Florida, Georgia, was based off of that, and it was looking at possibly reevaluating thresholds for pest management decisions based off of if farmers no longer had the use of irrigation. So more of a proactive rather than reactive of, let's just go ahead and look at this and see what kind of management decision we need to change. That way, if this were to happen, either now or in the future, we're more ahead of the game, we're prepared for it. And so I think maybe if we work directly with the different commodities to see, hey, what kind of water usage do you need? What do you need? What kind of challenges are you facing? We can have a better idea of who needs what and where the biggest issues could be coming, and be able to work directly with the, either university systems or NRCS or different entities like that to kind of more directly allocate those resources.
I love that, Allison, because when we think about UGA, we think about cooperative extension and the resources that are there. And not only is the University of Georgia a land grant institution, it's also a sea grant institution. And so the research that they are doing specifically on wildlife on Georgia's coast is huge when it comes to talking about water. And this month, or the past month, it's actually been huge when it comes to water resources. And Heather, you brought up, potential partnerships and people that we can work with. And right now there are some potential partnerships that have some government funding behind it that I think are beneficial for farmers. Both of those are coming through the governor's office in partnership with Albany State University. And in fact, they gave $4.9 million for research at Albany State University, locally matched with $3.7 million for that. And there are two areas that that's going in. One is a habitat conservation plan, which actually just came out this past week. And it kind of goes back to the water boards legislation that we faced. And it was all about the decrease of the wildlife and mussels and oysters in that area. And the purpose of this habitat conservation plan, it's a legal document that says if any loss comes to the freshwater mussels, oysters within that area, it is incidental and not on purpose by our farmers. And so, for example, in the future, if Florida decides to come back with another lawsuit, it provides our farmers the legislative backing that they need. Because that's a lot of what I think Farm Bureau can do too, knowing that they have access to the capital and legislators and lobbyists. When it comes to protecting our farmers, I think making them aware of those programs too. Again, those are very fresh. And so how can we use the Water Commodity Commission? How can we use a public policy? How can we use action alerts that come out from Farm Bureau and our local Farm Bureau offices to inform local farmers that is just one of the ways that they can have some legal backing, specifically in that 27 county area that's affected by the Flint River Basin, starting right near the airport and running through southwest Georgia. So Jacob, what are your thoughts on legislation, protecting our farmers and legal systems? What do you think?
Well, I think legislation right now is lacking in seeing what farmers truly do. They're possibly, we are lobbying very well as Farm Bureau, but we can continue to grow that because they're lacking seeing what they're in Atlanta, the capital, away from that southwest Georgia that's running all this possible irrigation and producing a lot of food that goes to the rest of the country. So I think that you're exactly right. We need to maybe bring in those committees and stuff like that to be able to put more lobbyists into the capital to help better show what our farmers are truly doing. Because I think it's lacking as in what they're seeing we're really doing in our society.
To your question, Andy, I think there is a good way that we can move forward, and there's actually something that we support in our Farm Bureau policy manual that I don't know has been explored for the Southeast. If it is, when you can inform me, I just haven't seen it yet. But in other parts of the country, like the Colorado River, there are actually interstate compacts where states have entered into legal agreements with each other on how water is going to be managed and whatever, of course, the recourse of one state harms the other. And I think that can keep some of the local issues out of the spotlight if Georgia Farm Bureau and Florida Farm Bureau form a joint task force to see, like, okay, what are the causes, what are the things we can agree on? What are the science-based ways that we can address water use in both of our states? And then actually form an interstate compact together, which that actually ties into legislative mandate because Congress has to approve those. There's usually not a lot of trouble with that. But if you actually have a good interstate compact between the two states with some way to address conflicts within itself, that can keep a regional issue regional rather than it going all the way up to the Supreme Court or some kind of national forum where everybody's water rights are the question and we have to allow congressmen and senators to make the decision when they don't actually know what we do. And that might be something that we could address to give more protection to our farmers, because then we'll have science-based agreements with one of the states that we recently got through the conflict with, and that might smooth things over with our neighbors to the south and to the east or to the west.
I go ahead, anyway. I think another point with that, in addition to working with different states, I think it would also be helpful to maybe tie in some of the environmental groups who are representing different viewpoints on the subject. And I say that because it would be bringing all the different voices together of all the different sides of the argument and argument discussion, whatever. And I think maybe it would help both sides stay on the same page of understanding where the other one's coming from. And so maybe it could be more of a cohesive agreement.
I think you're actually exactly right. And if you did bring those voices in, like into the task force and allow their, kind of use that as a sounding board before you explore an interstate compact, then that would also give us protection, our farmers protection from these random environmental lawsuits that come from.
More of a working together along the way rather than
Right.
being against each other.
Because if nobody feels excluded from the get-go when all the groundwork's being laid, it's a little bit hard for them to come back and try to have a sports shirt campaign.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times, I think a lot of times we view ourselves in a battle rather than working together towards one. And interesting when the well moratorium started in Southwest Georgia back in 2012 because of the drought. They stopped all deep water wells in that area from the Flint River Basin because of an extreme, a lot of our springs and creeks actually dry. In fact, Spring Creek was 100% dry, and several of the creeks in the area were 50% dry. But the director of the Flint River, which is an environmental group, which oftentimes in agriculture we hear environmental groups and our walls go up instead of our hands going out to start a conversation. He said that he was not a favor of the well moratorium because it was an admission of failed management. And so I think both of you, Allison and Nigger, are making really fantastic points about how do we bring them in the conversation. So that way it's not us both sitting on the other side of this legislation thinking, man, that's not what we wanted. Instead, let's gather together and compromise. And Heather, I saw you were about to say something, so sorry if I cut you off on that.
I think great, because I think that we're talking about things that we can do on a local level as far as the state level, and then even, reaching out and touching some states that are bordering us. And I think that's all fantastic. I think that if we want to maybe rein this back in a little bit and think about what can Georgia Farm Bureau do as a short-term goal, a short-term successful point. And maybe we just take advantage of some of the things that Farm Bureau already has in place. Like, for instance, our marketing team has leveled up within the last several years. And I think that we have done a lot of things that have been able to reach a lot of people, whether it's on social media, whether it's on football commercials, whether it's on the radio, but we can utilize those things right now. Familiar, there's a very green commercial right now that is talking about protecting our ocean, and they ask, what's your one thing? What is your one thing that you do on a daily basis that you're doing to help preserve the planet? And so I think we can kind of tweak that and give it an ad spin. And so if we have one of our marketing teams go out and we do a video and we interview farmers, like, what's your one thing that you're doing on a daily basis? What's your one thing, Amy and Allison and Jacob? What are you doing? And give them that insight into what farmers are actually doing on the daily that let people know that we're working to conserve our water and our resources. And I think getting in front of people and just showing them that farmers are doing things might encourage people to reinvest in the ag community. Jacob, what do you think? Do you think we could do something like this? Would you be willing to participate?
Oh, for sure. I think that would be a great idea, because as you've seen, like you said, the marketing team has gone way up, and the commercials now, as many people that sit and are able to watch TV and are at home more, that would be a better way for us to reach out to a larger scale audience. And I think Farm Bureau as a whole, with reaching out to farmers specifically too, would show them that they are protecting their resources, and we are trying to do our best to continue to grow what everybody needs in the world, but we're still trying to optimize what we already have. Because if we need to be able to sustain long-term. And so if Farm Bureau is able to reach out to farmers in even local areas, that gives you better local backing, which can then reach to your state level and further up into your national level. So then your governments are able to see what we're optimizing, and you're able to expand into a better system for us and other government agencies to see what we're doing.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think, we talked about there are programs out there that are available. And so how do we connect Farm Bureau and getting those programs out? Another one that just started as part of that funding through the governor's office and the EPA and that partnership is frost permit protection plans. And on June 21st of this past year, so this is really fresh. We have been in that well area since 2012, which means you can't drill any more deep or access the Flint River Basin in that 27 county Southwest Georgia area. Well, they just announced a frost permit protection plan, which is saying that with our blueberry farmers, our citrus farmers, when they're having to do frost protection purposes, they can apply for a permit that would allow them to access that vast basin of water for the purpose of 1 or 2 nights throughout the year using frost protection. And again, this is fresh, right? And think about the thousands of acres of blueberries that we have in that Southwest Georgia area and what a commodity it has been for our state. And I'd love to leverage our Farm Bureau marketing team, commercials, action alerts, and our local county Farm Bureau offices, because they are the hubs of the community. That's where events happen. I know at Oglethorpe County, our Farm Bureau office, there's the office space and there's the meeting space right next door. Where Rotary Club meets, where different civic groups come in together and providing information to post specifically for that 27 county area with frost protection permits, and saying, hey, like this is coming up. You may feel good using your irrigation for frost protection right now, but here's another way to access it. I think about my friend Kylie Lamar at One Dog Ventures down in Southwest Georgia. As you all know, we had a really bad cold spell right over Christmas break. And she spent her Christmas out on their citrus operation doing frost protection for the entire evening. So they didn't celebrate their Christmas holiday until about 3 days after. And I think about the use that frost protection permits could be to One Dog Ventures and my friend Kylie. And so I love where we're headed with that even Heather that we talked about. How do we use commercials? How do we use Farm Bureau marketing when the programs are starting? And again, I don't think anybody wants frost protection permits to be the last access that we have in the River Basin. But Farm Bureau Public Policy at a learning session at Albany State even said, this is our first step in the right direction. So how do we continue to access that? How do we continue to show them conversations through marketing?
So I wonder a little bit, going back to the frost protection, so Farm Bureau does, they fund some research grants that are given out, and awarded every year at the convention. And so I wonder if these genius minds are already working toward innovative things for our state and for the nation, for agriculture. What if we themed them? What if there's an extra incentive to make this one about water? Because Farm Bureau is really concerned about water right now. So what if we poured into these people that are really interested in solutions that would help your friends in South Georgia, that would provide solutions across the state? And we incentivize these smart minds to go and deep dive into a solution for water. You think that would work?
I like the way that y'all go with this, getting these things out to the farmers, letting them know what Farm Bureau is working on and what new innovations are coming out. And kind of go back to where we started with the marketing conversation. If you want to have a long running campaign like that, you need as many stories as possible. So I definitely like where y'all are going with the idea you just said, and that ties perfectly with what I've been thinking of while y'all were speaking. Farm Service Agency and NRCS especially have several programs that as far as managing irrigation and all this other stuff. I may have mentioned it earlier, but I don't think it's fully utilized. So I do think that we could use a lot of our local meetings, our conventions, learning sessions and stuff like that to tell our farmers, hey, NRCS has this program out here. Oh, hey, Farm Bureau is funding research on this practice over here. And like I was talking about earlier, we get as many producers on board with these new innovative practices. And then for all those emails on the sign-up sheets that we've collected from all those listening sessions, contact those producers sometime afterwards. But hey, how is this working for you? And if they've got a good story, go to their farm, get their face in the lens of the camera, and they can share their story. They can share that one thing that they're doing because they just got through implementing it, not too long after the Farm Bureau meeting.
That's a great action.
I think alongside with that, like you said, the communication could be key because, although we do, like we said, have some of the research funding available, if there's programs that are already in place, and a low-cost way of supporting those is just getting the message out there, saying, hey, we can help you get in touch with people who can get you signed up for this, or like you mentioned, meetings to just discuss what's going on with different programs. And so I think that would actually be a good way to help support the cause without necessarily having to
reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
I mean, if we already have like a method of dissemination that's working very well for other stuff, then really all we have to do is enhance it by getting more people, more guests to share the good news with our producers.
Yeah, I think that's our action plan is how do we enhance the communication that's already there? And so overall, we talked about what are our next steps. And I think it's implementing with our marketing team and specifically when we talk about how does Farm Bureau address this, is working with that water committee. And how can we connect our water committee with our marketing department here at Farm Bureau to connect to our grassroots, our roots, our local Farm Bureau offices, to get the messaging out about programs that are available, about studies that have been done, about research grants that have happened. I think that's our next steps, and that's where this conversation is leading us to. Jacob, we'll let you have a thought on that too.
Well, I think you're right. I think the best way for us to continue to grow is with our marketing, but with the commercial wise, if we just went around to say Southwest Georgia and just went to knock on doors and said, hey, can we just do a quick tour of your farm? Maybe a quick, just a 5-minute tour to drive around, show us some of the things that you feel like are working well. And we were able to put that out there. If that was a way for us to continue to grow it with the commercials and maybe not make it as expensive, but get those on our Farm Bureau pages so other people can see the ideas that farmers have, so that people can implement those at their other farms, because not everybody can make it to the conference.
Yeah.
So if they aren't able to actually be there, then they're still able to see somebody else that implemented it and reach out to them and try and build on that. So where they can help implementing it at their farm, help optimize the resources as well.
I think another good part of doing any type of marketing and broadcasting, showing specific farms and what people are doing on their actual production level, is that the viewers aren't just gonna be producers, but also people who aren't directly involved in production end, but they're voters and they're in touch with their local government and their local representatives, and they're gonna have a voice too, and so they need to be able to see this side of our issues and this side of what we're representing.
Time has been called. Please prepare your closing statements. I ask that the audience remain silent for 1 minute to aid the competitors in their preparation. Please put down your pencils. In voluntary order, please stand and give your 1 minute closing statement.
Since biblical times, we've been dealing with water, whether that be a flood that came over the earth, whether that be using it to grow crops, or I know one guy that happened to walk on water. And I think our conversation today taught us how do we walk with water, with other people. And I think we've had a really productive discussion. Jacob, you brought us some interesting points about how do we bring in UGA and partnerships through those pieces, and Allison bringing in multiple voices, even people that we may not think are the same voice. How do we start that conversation? Heather talking about what's your one thing, where do we go from here, what's our one thing that we can do, and Newt really bringing in some legislation pieces on how do we work with other states to create legal documents to make sure that we're protected when it comes to water. And so when I think about our one thing, I think it's working with Farm Bureau, I think it's working with our marketing department and our water committees to move forward to Riders and Water. So thank y'all for this discussion today. It was really, really fun, and I appreciate it.
Whether it's legislative, whether it's partnerships, it's all about relationships and how we can make those relationships to level up when it comes to water. You mentioned the one thing, and I think that we've all determined today that our one thing is Farm Bureau and what we can do for tomorrow. I think that our conversations today really brought us together on how we can take Farm Bureau and use it as a platform to create multiple solutions, not only on our state level, but touching those states around us and also impacting our counties. Thank you.
I think the nature of our discussion showed the complexity and many different angles of this issue, but I appreciated how we naturally and organically moved from top level issues like legislation and interstate compacts all the way down to the local grassroots level, especially when it comes to empowering local partnerships, bringing our farmers in with our marketing team and our water committee. And I think that's an excellent next step to build up to some of those bigger solutions that we discussed. Thank you guys all for your time. I really enjoyed it.
Well, I certainly think this is a topic that is going to affect everyone. Whether you are a producer or not, you eat food and drink water. This is something that I think Farm Bureau certainly has space to be a voice in. And I look forward to just seeing how Farm Bureau can really help with this. And I do think that support in different areas from a national level all the way down to your community level is key, especially diving into different commodities, different programs that are already out there, and how we can support new programs as well as getting that message out there.
Water is something that we say could be affected at a local level, state level, national level, or all over the world. And I like how we went from, like you said, from the top all the way down to the bottom, to where Georgia Farm Bureau can affect each level. And so we're able to reach out to each part in marketing, as Heather said, or even through legislation and partnerships. That would be a great way for Farm Bureau to reach out And I think that we had a great discussion on how irrigation and water could be affected in the long term by Farm Bureau. Thank you for your time.
Let's show our competitors a round of applause for a job well done.